So even if you're not in the IT industry, you've surely heard of hackers breaking into networks and taking up residence, often encrypting all the information on the network and charging people to get it back. These hackers often hide in networks for months, going completely undetected until they're finished doing their dirty work. In the case of Citrix, the GoToMeeting people, hackers were in their network for 5 months undetected. Wouldn't it be awesome if you could find out that someone was poking around in your network before they started doing malicious things? Well, there's a way, and it's called a honeypot. So there's a company out there called Thinkst, and they make some very cool devices. And the way these devices work is they sit on your network, and they look like your typical FTP server or RDP server or web server, but they have one distinction. When hackers see them and try to access them, the IT people are immediately notified because they're not real servers and there's really no reason anybody should ever be trying to access them. So they immediately tell you that someone is poking around on your network. But there's only one problem with them. If you click on the generate quote online, you can see that the smallest package you can set up is 2 of them, and they run $2,500 each per year. And that is quite a chunk of change for your average home network. Wouldn't it be nice if there was a cheaper alternative? Well, there is. The same people, Thinkst, who made the Canary, also have a project called OpenCanary. OpenCanary is free, relatively easy to set up, and will run on a $35 Raspberry Pi computer. The OpenCanary project allows you to emulate all these different kinds of servers and make as many honeypots as you want at absolutely no charge for the software. So let's say that I'm a hacker and I've managed to wiggle my way onto your network. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is start poking around the network and see what's out there that I can exploit. I'm going to use a Windows tool to make it easy for you to see what's going on here, but I'm going to scan an IP range of the network so that I can see what's out there. Now, in this case, I'm only going to scan 2 IPs and a bunch of ports. So we're going to do this. We're going to scan it. It'll take a second. Now, you can see I scanned a range of 2 IPs, and I actually came back with 2 servers. I can see their MAC address. Now, this MAC address gives it away pretty quickly that this is a Raspberry Pi. This is an Orange Pi. I could mask these. I could clone them and make them look like something else. But the thing that's really important to me is I'm seeing these ports here, and they make me think of a few things. They make me think of FTP, secure FTP, and SSH, and those are targets that I want to exploit. Okay, so I fired up an FTP program, and I'm going to try to exploit that FTP server. So I'm going to punch in 192.168.95.154, and I'm going to see if these people are dumb enough to use some kind of default password. So I'm going to put in root, and I'm going to put in password, and I'm going to go after port 21 because that looks like a pretty rich target to me. I'm going to hit quick connect, and I'm going to get a warning that this thing doesn't support TLS. And for my sense, that's awesome. I want this server to be as insecure as possible. So, okay, let me in, and it's going to try passwords required. Yep, that's doing exactly what an FTP server can do. So I've pretty much verified that this is an FTP server, but my password is wrong. So okay, maybe I'll keep trying. Maybe I'll go on somewhere else. But what happened in the meantime was this. Less than 1 second later, I was given an alert in Gmail telling me that someone tried to access the honeypot at 192.168.95.154 on port 21. This is the time. This is the username they entered, the password they entered. They were on computer 192.168.95.50. That is Karen from accounting's computer. So this tells me one of 2 things. Either Karen from accounting took up corporate espionage in her spare time, or she fell for another phishing scam promising nudes of Jason Momoa. Either way, it's time to go over there and unplug her computer and start investigating. So how did I set this up? The first thing you'll need is any Raspberry Pi that's a model 2, 3, or 4. If you're looking to go mid-range, this is a nice kit here on Amazon. I'll link to it in the description. But you'll need to do this, and you'll need to download a Raspberry Pi image. Now, normally you would do something like go to the Raspberry Pi website and download Rasbian or Raspberry Pi OS. But in this situation, you're going to actually want to go to ubuntu.com and download Ubuntu 18.04.5, one of the 32-bit editions, depending on which Raspberry Pi you have. And you're going to install that on your SD card like normal using a program like Balena Etcher or something like that. There's a million tutorials out there for burning SD cards. So once you're done, you're going to pop that card into the Pi and you're going to boot. And I recommend you plug the Pi into a TV or monitor and put a keyboard in there And the first time you go to log in, you're going to log in with the username of Ubuntu and the password of Ubuntu. And it's going to ask you to change that password, so go ahead and do that. Now, generally, it's going to show you the IP address of the Pi right here if you want to access it remotely over SSH. That's how I like to do it. If you don't see that, then you can type in IPADDR show, and it will bring up the IP address. You kind of have to poke around for it, but it'll be in there right here. So either way, that's your IP address of your Pi. You'll need to know that for the future. So I've listed all the commands that you need to type in to make this work. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I'm going to go through, and then there is one part when it comes to configuring your email that we're going to go over in a little bit more detail. Okay, so it's going to take about 6 to 8 minutes or so until you get to the point where you have run this last command that says pip install OpenCanary. And so at that point, what we're going to want to do is something that doesn't seem super obvious, but we are going to want to copy the config file and so that we can edit it. And so we're going to take this and we're going to copy it. And now what we want to do, if we are on the Orange Pi, we're going to do it one way. If we're on the Raspberry Pi, we're going to do it a different way. But we're on a Raspberry Pi, so we are going to copy this line right here where we want to open that config file. So we're going to click it, we're going to open it, and you can enable the different services here. So in other words, you can come and change this to, you can say main FTP or something like that. Like you can make it look like it's a real FTP server. You can come down here, you can enable these different things. So when we come here, we're going to see this thing that says Quargs, and then we have handlers. And so what we want to do is come down to this section right here to the handlers, and we're going to hit enter. And you need to look at this guide that will show you exactly how to set up your email. So as I bring this up, you can see that we have send to a Gmail address. We have send using SMTP authentication. I'm using send to a Gmail address. So the thing I want to do is grab just this little section right here, and I'm going to copy it. And then I'm going to go back into my config file, and where it says handlers right here, I'm going to right click it and paste it, and it won't come formatted very well, so I might want to kind of space that over a little bit. And the one thing you'll notice is that in the example, they don't put a comma here, so we're going to put the comma there. So you're going to want to match your settings with these settings. This decides where your email is coming from, so you would put your email at gmail.com. You can send it to anybody you want. And then you're going to come down here and give it a subject, and then you're going to put your actual credentials. So if you're using Gmail, your address would get replaced with your full Gmail address, and then your Gmail password goes in here. Then you're going to hit Control X to save it, and Control Y will tell you that you definitely want to save it, and hit enter. Once you've properly configured your email, you can come in here and run OpenCanary start, and it will start. If you've messed up your email configuration, that'll be pretty obvious. You'll get something like SMTP authentication error. You can go back and correct that by editing that config file again. But that's about it. At this point, you can do the things that I did in the demo, and there's tons of other options, tons of other servers that you can set up. The idea with this is you set up a server that should never really be used. So if anyone tries to use it, you know something is wrong. It's just like they say with the canary in the coal mine. They used to bring a canary down into the coal mine because the canary was so much more susceptible to the different gases that were down there. And if the canary stopped singing, you knew there was something wrong. And so it was meant to be this early warning sign that something wasn't right. And that's exactly what this is. You take an old Pi, you leave it in the corner of your network, and you don't think about it again. But if you get an email notification, then you know that you need to go visit Karen in accounting. So I hope this helps somebody. I hope you guys enjoyed the project. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.